Mr. Nahom, can you lead us in the pledge, sir?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, a moment of silence for the men and women in the armed forces, and this Saturday is Armed Forces Day. Thank you.
Thanks for the 4 minutes of the It's 5 of them, like
Nice. And our first thing is we're going to be doing certificates of recognition. If we could pass these down this way. And Walter, you can take a look at this one.
I'm close.
And these are our wonderful Girl Scouts. What they did was they made some picnic tables for Sarah Noble School. And for those that you see, they did an outstanding job. Absolutely beautiful. And they invited me to take a look at them. And I said, you know, ladies, this is awesome. This is for the town. Right, ladies? So the town wants to recognize you for doing a good thing for our town. We want to thank you for that. So, I know there's a couple that are here today and a couple can't be here today. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read everybody's name and then we're going to read one of the recognitions. Okay? So, if you girls can come on up here. Come on up.
He's invite.
And, ready? Okay. So, the town of New Milford would like to recognize the Girl Scouts, and I may say this wrong, Elise Dahl, Hannah Amaretto, Reese Waters, getting all stuck, and Sydney Schomburg, right? For Troop 40255 for their donation of 3 picnic tables for Sarah Noble Intermediate School. Your troop was involved from the start to finish, from picking out the wood, putting everything together, and finally decorating them. Thank you for your hard work, contribution, and dedication for our wonderful town. We are very, very proud. Great job, ladies.
Thank you.
I'll let you bring these over. Which one is yours there? That hand is yours. This one's yours. And I'll give the other one to Mom maybe and she can do them. And, yep. There you go. Great job, ladies. Thank you.
Pete, I just texted you the picture.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know if you need it for something.
Next public comment, sir. Oops, I'm sorry, I've got one last thing. Sorry.
Okay,
fine. So, this week is National Public Works Week.
Okay.
So, we're doing a proclamation like we did last year for National Public Works Week. Because thank goodness for Public Works, they take care of our roads, especially when it's snowing, right? So, whereas Public Works infrastructure, facilities, parks, open spaces, and public services are of vital importance to the health, safety, and well-being of the residents of the town of New Milford. And whereas such facilities and services could not be provided without the dedicated efforts of our Public Works professionals who operate and maintain the public buildings, roads, parks, and infrastructure town-wide. And whereas it has been demonstrated that Public Works provides critical response capabilities, experience and support to all levels of government and town agencies in times of natural and man-made disasters. And whereas it is in the public interest for the citizens and civic leaders of this community to gain knowledge of and to maintain a progressive interest in the Public Works need and programs and employees, And now therefore I, Pete Bass, Mayor of the Town of New Milford, do hereby designate the week of May 19th through the 25th as National Public Works Week. We urge all of our residents to join with representatives of governmental agencies and the American Public Works Association in activities and ceremonies designated to pay tribute to our public works employees and recognize the substantial contributions of health and welfare they provide daily and on a local national level. Thank you. Hear, hear. Yes, sir.
All right, I got Irene. Irene, 205 Pumpkinville Road. I couldn't quite read your last name.
That's okay. Thank you for not mutilating the name.
Well, this is kind of my part. Thank you, Irene.
I'll forgive you. I'm sorry, I'm staying on top of this.
All right. I wasn't entirely sure this was a town issue, but it actually is. So I'm going to mention it. As of April 4th, the U.S. has confirmed 465 cases of measles. That's more than all the cases in 2018. As of May 3rd, that number went up to 764. Today, 10 days later, it's 839, and that's double last year's count. This is the largest outbreak since health officials declared measles eliminated in 2000, a milestone that was largely due to widespread vaccination. Measles is highly contagious. You're susceptible if you haven't been vaccinated. You can catch it in a room 2 hours after someone with measles has left. If someone with measles is around a bunch of people who haven't been vaccinated, 90% of them are going to get sick. About 1 child in every 1,000 who gets measles will develop encephalitis, swelling of the brain, which can lead to convulsions, deafness, or intellectual disability. 1 out of every 20 children will get pneumonia, which is also deadly. Several states currently permit religious exemptions from vaccines, even though the Constitution does not require them to do so, given the health risks of unvaccinated children, primarily infants who cannot get the measles shot prior to 12 months. And people with compromised immune systems, and this not to mention for the fiscally minded, if you can't look at the humanitarian issues, the skyrocketing financial burden put on states due to vaccine-preventable illnesses. It's time for the states to change their laws so that fringe religious objections do not get in the way of protecting the safety of our communities. Restriction of religious exemption is compelling under the context of human rights. Article 25 of the UN's Universal Declaration of Human Rights says that, this is a quote, "Everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for health and well-being of himself and his family, including medical care." Surely if we have the ability to prevent life-threatening illness from harming a child, we should give that child protection. I'm pretty sure all of us can agree on that. To infringe on religious freedom for the well-being of a child is not unprecedented. There is legislation against child marriages, although child marriage was actually legal in Connecticut prior to 2017, which I find disturbing. But it's illegal now, thank goodness. So why do so many states still allow religious exemptions for vaccination? Restricting all non-medical exemptions, which, hold your hats, this is pretty crazy. The strategy is actually enacted in, of all places, West Virginia and Mississippi, 2 places that I would not think are forward-thinking, but actually are. And California is permitted under the First Amendment because free exercise of religion is not absolute. I'm sure our Esquire here can refer us to Prince v. Massachusetts, which said that a parent cannot claim freedom of compulsory vaccination for a child more than for himself on religious grounds. The right to practice religion does not include the liberty to expose the community or to the child to communicable disease, or the latter to ill health and death. None of the country, not to mention, none of the country's largest religions prohibit the use of vaccines, and only a small handful of minor religions, Christian Science and Dutch Reformed Congregation, among several faith-healing denominations, resists vaccination due to theological objection. And just as an aside, the Christian Scientists had a school in Darien, and in 1972 they had an outbreak of polio. Like, who even knew that polio was around in the United States in 1972? 2 kids were paralyzed and 11 fell ill. Okay, let's bring it local. New Milford has schools with immunization rates below the CDC 95% standard of measles, mumps, rubella for the 2017-2018 year. I'm sure you've probably all read the report and you're familiar with this. And you know which schools they are. Some of the exemptions are for medical reasons, which is understandable, but many are for religious exemptions. Now, how do you get a religious exemption? You download a form and you fill it out. Nobody asks you which Dutch Reform school you go to, or anything about Christian Science. Nothing from a pastor, nothing. You just download it and fill it out. So why am I going in?
You're at 4 minutes, please.
Why am I going into this now? It seems several state representatives and senators feel that the religious exemption should be upheld at the state level, putting our most vulnerable citizens at risk. I have a copy of the letter, and they sent it to the Attorney General. The thought that these folks do not understand what's at stake, and a disease like measles that can cause pneumonia, encephalitis, and death in infants and children, and yes, in adults, is mind-boggling to me. Last month, Bill Buckby was here talking about the danger of bears. Maybe he should think about the dangers of measles and the unvaccinated kids that will be subject to this because of his position on religious exemptions, which is basically a sham. Thank you.
Thank you, Irene.
Oh, and talk to him about it, because it will come back.
Seamus McKeon, please.
I'm Seamus McKeon, live on Arcadia Lane, which is a private road off of North Road. I'd like to talk to you about the town's decision to use North Road as the detour for Squire Hill. It's a dirt road, it's narrow, there are blind turns on it, there are blind hills on it. I was thrilled to see that speed limit signs of 15 miles an hour were put up. That doesn't stop many of the drivers who are too busy trying to get wherever they're going. I have been almost hit while walking my dog, and I might mention every morning my wife and I walk all of North Road and Mine Hill Road and back to our house with our dog. We see just about everything. Yes, I'm out there telling people to slow down, I get the finger. I was almost hit while walking, our dog's been almost hit while we've been out. This past weekend, I was coming back from kayaking up on Lake Warramug, had a boat on my roof, drove down North Road, and at one point below the intersection with Old Mine, there is a blind turn. I went around that at about 10 miles an hour. Another car was coming the other direction, slammed on the brakes, stopped 6 inches apart. Told me to go to hell, basically. I reminded him that the speed limit was 15 miles an hour on the road. Now I hear that we're going to repair the bridge on Tamarack Road. And the initial comment was, we'll probably just use the North Road detour. I don't understand why we're using North Road when you've got West Meeting House. It's paved. There are stop signs at the end. There are no blind corners. We don't have any of the risks. Basically, I'm begging you to rethink this one and to think about changing the detour. I don't know how much longer Squire Hill will be under construction. Certainly needs it, but there will be a problem on North Road. I'm certain of it. I was at our neighbor's house 2 weekends ago, walked out from their house on at the corner of North Road and Old Mine, walked over across the road, across Old Mine to get my car, and was almost hit by a car coming down Old Mine at a fairly high rate of speed for that kind of conditions. So I would just ask you, please, please, take a look at what the alternatives are. And if there is a viable alternative, let's consider it. The other incident, walking northbound on North Road. We had somebody come by. I was out on the road, said, just slow down. He cursed me, gave me the finger, and then accelerated going up over a blind hill. I hate to say this, and I mentioned it to Mayor Bass this afternoon, but I kind of wished that maybe the town grader was on the other side of that hill, because he would have learned very quickly that he was going too fast. But too many people are getting away with it. Big trucks, big trailer trucks going up North Road. And it's not wide enough for a car to pass a trailer truck. So if you give that some attention, we would all appreciate it. And there are many others who walk on that road as well. It's one of New Milford's beautiful scenic roads. And right now, I think it's a big problem. Thank you.
Thanks, Seamus.
Thank you, Mr. McEwen. Steve Looney, please.
Good evening, folks. Steve Looney, 55 Fordyce Road. I wasn't really going to speak, but Walter had missed my charming voice, so he asked that I sign up.
Oh, thanks, Walter.
I really wanted to speak because I actually wanted to speak about how good our neighbors are. I mean, we just had two people talk about it, but people need to slow down, how people need to curb their religious freedoms, their thoughts. My stepson, just returned from his military service, and this weekend a group of people whom we don't know welcomed him home on the green. There was 100, 130 people there, the mayor was there, many other people were there. It was very nice. It was raining, it didn't matter. It didn't dampen anybody's enthusiasm, from a little girl of maybe 5 years of age handing him a box of candy and welcoming him home. He didn't know the girl. It was nice. We live in a great town.
Steve, thank you. Steve, if I may make a comment, I'm sorry I missed that because I was not available, but I would have loved to have been there. Thank you, sir. By the way, RA 1138311-2, sir. That's the end of the list, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Walter. Next is Mayor's remarks. A few things. First, Mr. Looney just mentioned it, but I want to thank the Yellow Ribbon Committee who put on the welcoming of Sergeant Lynch, Marine Sergeant Lynch. As stated before, we had well over 100 people there, and it was great to see. We had Jeff McBriarty, who's the American Legion commander, Jim Delancey, who is the VFW commander. We had numerous servicemen that were there as well as the public to welcome home one of our New Milford brethren. And we thank him, Mr. Lynch, for his service, as well as everyone, including yourself, Walter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Next, I'd like to thank the Northville Fire Department for their Mother's Day breakfast. They do this annually, and they put on a great breakfast, and I can tell you firsthand, it was a very good breakfast. So I thank them for that. This week is National Skilled Nursing Week, and basically that is we're honoring those nurses and CNAs that work in the retirement homes. Kennewood Valley, Village Crest, also the nurses in the VNA, Genron Nursing, and New Milford Hospital, to just name a few. So we thank them for taking care of our loved ones when they can't take care of themselves. So we thank them for that, because that's what the community is all about. Farmers Market opened this past weekend. I'm a sucker for Averill Farms donuts. Those the cedar donuts, those things are good. And just wonderful to see all the people coming in and partaking, as well as our merchants that come in and partake. And they're open from 9 to 12 on the green on Saturdays, so we thank them for opening up. As Walter was saying a little bit earlier this evening, Goat Days, it's the greatest of all town, is having Saturday and Sunday from 10 to 5 down on Young's Field. So we hope that our residents can make it there to celebrate best town in the USA. It's New Milford. I'd like to thank everyone that came to the Coffee with the Mayor this past Saturday. It's great to hear your input, and we thank you. Next, I'd like to give a brief update as we're doing our Lynn Deming safety project. So we're continuing on with that. The actual lanes where the gates, the new security gates are putting up, they're almost completed with that. They're bringing in the Wi-Fi and also the computerization. So this will be done, according to Dan Calhoun, well before opening day, which is Memorial Day. I've also asked the New Milford Police Department on Memorial Day weekend to add additional security, come into the park numerous times to just check and make sure. Eversource has been gracious to close off the top piece there, so we're not going to have people parking and walking in. So it's good to see that our investment is a secure investment. And for those that want to pass, you can go down to the Park and Rec, pay your ticket, and love to have you there. And I want to thank the Park and Rec Commission and Dan Calhoun for their hard work on that. Next is a brief roads update. As Seamus talked about before, we are working on, as we speak, on Squire Hill. Unfortunately, the rain has kind of pushed us back a little bit. Mill and pave will be due as soon as we get the milling part of the road, the drainage is completed. Now the milling is the next to bring it down to the sub base. When we get a nice day, hopefully we can get that taken care of. We're looking at an end date for Squire Hill, end of October, beginning of November for completion. Long Mountain Road, for the part that needs the top course, we're actually looking to put that top course on within the next couple weeks, all weather dependent on that. We're continuing to work with our design engineer team for the 9 major roads that we are working on over the summer and the fall. Hopefully we'll have the final design back from the design engineers by the end of the week so that we could put those out to bid. Also to let you know too, within our program, we're looking to do 26 miles of chip seal and additional mileage for crack seal as well. So I want to thank our DPW team and design engineers all for their hard work in moving that forward. Also an update with the New Milford Police Department. So one thing that they're being very vigilant on is looking at traffic control, speeding. So you're going to see them out more often, especially during times when we see a lot of that. Also, just so everyone is aware, there's going to be a major emphasis on when the buses on Route 7 are pulled over to let students out. If there is not a divider, you are to stop. Right. If you do not stop, the police are going to hand you a $400 ticket. So it's very important that we are going to be extremely vigilant, and that's going to be a big effort on the part of the police department to enforce that. So for those watching on the live stream, please make sure you stop in the opposite direction or in back of the bus when it's got its red lights on. If there's not a divided highway, you need to stop. If not, you will get a ticket. Lastly, our budget referendum. We go to the polls on 5/21, and the polls are open from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. And I hope we all can do our efforts for our town and go out and vote your conscience, how you feel it should be. The more representative that we are, the better. And that's all I have.
Make a
Next.
motion,
Oh, sorry.
consent agenda, make a motion that the town council approve the following item, regular town council meeting minutes of April 22nd, 2019.
Second.
One question, Mayor.
Yes.
The last 4 items are all about road closures and all.
Yes.
Any reason why those weren't put on the consent agenda?
We had a fellow councilman in the beginning when we were doing the consent agendas, asked that we put them on singularly, and if it is okay with the council, then with the motion, we could add those on to the consent agenda and then move them forward.
Well, I had a couple of questions on the number item 11. Not that not down for it again, but I do have some questions on that, just because that's a new one. The other ones are continuing ones that we've had forever, so I'm fine with that.
Well, my point is, so you can pull anything you want off a consent agenda. One person, you don't need even 2, so. My point is those should just be on consent agenda, then anybody who wants to pull it off, but they're not on for tonight, that's fine. Did you get a second on the consent agenda?
That would work for me.
Any discussion on the consent agenda? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Make a motion for the following appointment to the zoning commission, appoint Ron Evans, Republican, alternate for a term of May 13th, 2019 to January 31st, 2022.
Second. Any discussion? And Mr. Evans is here?
Who seconded
Is
it?
this filling a role, or?
Yes.
Who seconded it? Thank you.
So is a vacant Republican alternate seat on zoning?
And it goes till 2022?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Parks right here, if anybody has any questions. Mr. Evans, I'm sorry.
Want to come down and say a few words, or? All right.
Thanks, Walter.
Ha!
Thanks.
Well, you're welcome.
If he speaks,
I appreciate it.
actually, I'll walk out and then you can't vote.
No, about a year and a half I came to say I want to really help the town, and this is a great post, and I'm very appreciative of getting the honor of being brought forward, and I hope to do my best in this role, and if anybody has questions, concerns, I am always free to be available and discuss. Thank you.
Thank you, Ron.
Ron, do you have
Any
the
further
rest?
discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Okay. Thank you, Ron.
That was painless, Ron.
Make a motion to appoint the following members to the Municipal Buildings Committee for terms of May 27th, 2019 to January 31st, 2022. The following four people: Ronald Schlesinger, Republican; Robert Beebe, Republican; Timothy Clark, Democrat; Charles Bogie, Republican, and for the term of May 27th, 2019 to January 31st, 2020, Chris Gardner, Republican; Brandon Merritt, Libertarian; John Rosa, unaffiliated.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Briefly, all of these individuals all have extensive building experience and knowledge, and I think they'd be a wonderful attribute to our town as we move forward and helping us on our municipal, both on the town and the Board of Ed side, municipal building projects. Any further discussion? Dr. Mullen.
Just some questions about the committee itself, not about the appointees. Just to clarify, is this committee allowed to negotiate contracts?
No.
They just watch, like,
Correct.
after the fact and make sure.
Correct.
And they're not allowed to award any contracts?
That's through the town bidding process.
Yeah, I just want to make sure. All right, thank you.
Works
Any
for
other
me.
discussion?
One last question.
Yes, Dr.
Any reason why there are no women on this committee?
I just went by the ones that wanted to be on the committee. That'd be great. I'm actually going to ask the council at our next meeting to see if we can actually expand this committee by a few people. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
All right.
Opposed? Thank you.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. So next we have the, we're going to be looking at resolutions for bonding. I think it's important as a council as we kind of see where we are in the process. So we have Greg, our finance director, and we have Barry, who's our financial analyst, our consultant. And I've asked Barry to come in a little bit today to give us a brief overview on where we are as far as our debt and how we have the ability to use the same debt dollars that we have today without increasing our debt dollars to be able to get these capital projects that are so desperately needed done. So Barry?
Good evening, Barry Bernabe. As the mayor said, the town's financial advisor. We work very closely with the finance director and the mayor whenever the town issues for capital projects. Before we look at the actual debt overview, there's two main drivers that determines a municipality's borrowing cost. If you go to the first slide, is the overall level of interest rates. This chart here is a little bit busy, but what it plots is the yield on the 10-year U.S. Treasury bond, which is a benchmark for all long-term borrowing costs. That chart goes back 50 years. And interest rates peaked in 1981, which is that green circle up on top. Since then, they've been coming down, and they bottomed out in 2016. And on the far right-hand side of the graph there, you can see where we are today. Long story short, what this is, we're not at all-time lows, but we're just off all-time lows. So this bodes well for any community that needs to borrow or issue bonds. If we go on to the next one. The second factor that determines a municipality's borrowing is your bond rating. So the two main rating agencies are Standard & Poor's and Moody's. The first column is the Standard & Poor's rating scale, and the one to the right is the Moody's rating scale. AAA is the highest. New Milford is rated one notch below the highest rating possible, but it's our goal this year to go for that AAA. I think we have a good, the town's in a good position for that. It's a AA plus from Standard & Poor's and AA1 from Moody's. So with such a high bond rating and overall level of interest rates, that bodes well for getting a very low borrowing cost. Now, what determines a municipality's bond rating? There's really 5 different factors. I got them listed up there. They look at management practices, how much discipline a municipality has, putting the budget together, generating surpluses. I think this is a big positive for the town. The town's very strong financial position, high fund balance ratios, good budget discipline. So it bodes well for number one. They look at your economy and your demographics, unemployment rate, your financial performance, debt management, and long-term liabilities. Now that long-term liabilities is becoming more and more of a problem, especially for states such as Connecticut, with these long-term health care costs and pension costs starting to eat up more and more of the operating budget. But again, New Milford's in a good position with all of these factors. So when we look at the town's current borrowing plans, currently the town has about $7.3 million of bands, bond anticipation notes, that are coming due this July. When those notes mature in July, the town is planning to pay down about $525,000 on the outstanding road projects and add another $2 million to that of already authorized road projects for a total of about $8.8 million. We're looking to do a permanent financing this summer. And then in addition to that, as the mayor said, the town is looking to approve $23.5 million of new projects with a net cost to the town after the expected library donations and grants of about $21.5 million. So if we go on to the next chart, this graph right here is it illustrates the town's existing bonded debt service payments. And the good news here is if you look at that arrow, the town's debt amortizes very aggressively. That's a wonderful chart to me as a financial advisor because a lot of communities, when you issue bonds, you could actually push it all off for future administrations to worry about. New Milford historically has never done that. That debt is amortizing aggressively, and that can be used to mitigate any new debt service, which you're going to see in a little while. So if you go on to the next chart, we see that exact same chart. Those blue bars, again, are the town's existing bonded annual debt service payments. Those little red bricks, proposed new debt service, is the roughly $8 million we're looking to bond in July, plus the $21.5 million of proposed new capital projects altogether. So that's over $30 million in new debt service. So existing debt plus the proposed debt, and the town's current debt levels won't go up at all. They'll stay kind of flat for the next couple of years and then drop off again, which will allow the town to continue to improve capital projects to improve the infrastructure of the town. Again, there's very few communities where this works as well as it does here. And again, the magic sauce is high bond rating, overall low level of interest rates, and a very aggressive amortization of existing debt service, which mitigates the proposed debt service. So I can't talk about the overall budget going forward, but what I can say is based on this analysis here, that the debt service budget, with these new projects approved, will not go up at all from their current levels. And just go to the last slide here, just some summary points. Again, interest rates remain near all-time lows. The town's credit ratings from both Moody's and Standard & Poor's, two main rating agencies, are very high, and we're looking to get it one notch higher. And again, the town's existing debt service is amortizing aggressively, and the town can issue the $21.5 million of proposed new capital projects without debt going any higher than it currently is right now. If there's any questions or anything? Sure.
Yeah. First, so just by looking at this slide, it looks like $60 million is our magic number here where we want to keep things. Is that, and then it stays where we want it, and that's, I guess, our goal as a town is to keep projects coming as long as they stay below that number.
Right, if the town, after this 21.5 million, if there's more projects coming down the pike, there's actually more capacity a few years out to actually add more debt without debt service going up higher.
Now, if interest rates do start to climb a little bit, does that mean that we should start borrowing a little bit less in the future to keep it below that number?
Well, that's a good point. If rates do go up significantly, that could impact this to some degree. But as that chart, that 50-year chart I showed before, rates have been low for a while. They've been going low. People said they're going to go higher. They haven't really gone up, with inflation staying low. But the short answer to your question is yes. If interest rates start going up, that might kind of put a little bit more of a cap on things.
And the only other question is our rating compared to other towns surrounding us, are we about equal to the towns surrounding us, or are we a little better? Or I'm just more curious.
You're on average, you're about equal, but there are a few. Brookfield's higher, Newtown's higher.
So they're AAA.
They're AAA. And that's part of what we're looking, the ironic thing is, in my opinion, the town's financial position is stronger than all those other communities. The last time we went for a bond rating, the state of Connecticut was falling off a cliff. The state just cut state aid to municipalities, and New Milford got hit hard. You had a $1 million shortfall, you got whacked. We were right in the middle of the storm, and the rating agencies were very reluctant. They were downgrading everybody. So at that point in time, we were happy just to hold the rating. But now that things have kind of stabilized a little, and the town's looking at a surplus, the reserve levels are high, I think we got a good chance this summer to push that up. No guarantees, but I'm optimistic about it.
Any other questions for Barry? Dr. Mullin?
Staying on this chart, if you would, the proposed debt service, so it looks like it's just a little over $1 million in 2020. Then it goes to, looks like 2 1/4, 2 1/3. And it increases, it probably stays about that for 4 years. Tell me, just explain why it goes from that, probably a little over $1 million to a little over $2 million from 2020 to 2021.
Right. So in July of this year, if the town does bond issue in July, typically a principal payment comes due a year later.
Oh, so that's the 19 is in the 20.
Right.
And the 20 is in the 21.
Correct.
All right, never mind, I got it.
And I assumed I was very aggressive here that the bulk of that $21 million of new projects would get bonded in the next year or two. But in reality, it really depends on the town, how fast the town needs the money for this project. I know the mayor talked about the rain. The rain seems like it's been coming forever, which slows the road projects that were approved several years ago. Seems like it's slowing things down now. So it is possible that some of this may get deferred a little bit, depending on how fast the town could work on these projects.
Come on.
Yeah. Another point brought up, if interest rates go up, it costs us more to borrow money. But as interest rates go up, our investments should respond also. How do those two relate in our history? Have the money we made on our investments covered the borrowed money when rates go up or, I guess, go down? Because, right now we're borrowing money at a low rate, but, we're making next to nothing on our investments also.
Right. Now, short-term rates have gone up a little bit. Now, the chart I showed was long-term rates. Short-term rates, last year, the Federal Reserve, which controls short-term rates, pushed them up higher.
Right.
So you're probably earning a little bit more from your short-term investments.
Yeah, we're getting about 2.38 from our stiff investments.
Mm-hmm.
So that helps to compensate a little bit as short-term rates go up. Nobody really knows where interest rates are going to be in the future. Nobody predicts. But based on what we've seen, I don't think a small increase in interest rates are really going to impact this chart all that much. In order for that to really go above that solid black line, you need rates to go up dramatically. Something, inflation has to start getting out of control, which would push up rates quite a bit. A small uptick or two is really not going to have a material impact on that graph.
Well, if the Fed increases rate, doesn't that keep inflation in control?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of factors going into place. The ironic thing is the Fed controls short-term rates. So last year they started increasing short-term rates. So if the town were to borrow on a short-term basis, say 1 year, like a bond anticipation note, the rate would be around 2%. But if you issue bonds for 15 or 20 years, that borrowing cost is about 2.25 or 2.5%. So there's not that much difference between borrowing long-term versus short-term.
And there's less risk.
And there's less risk, because once you lock that in, you don't have to worry about where interest rates are going to be, because that's going to be locked in for the next 20 years. And not to get into too much of the nitty-gritty, but with all of this new tax law that happened, where people lost a lot of their deductibility with their mortgage income and deducting real estate taxes, we've seen a lot more demand from investors from tax-exempt municipal bonds. So there's a huge demand out there, and a lot of those investors want high-rated credits. Communities that they know over the next 15 or 20 years are going to get their money back. So it's just, we've seen so much demand for these bond sales. Investors are coming in, pushing rates down quite a bit. So the town, it can't be a better time than right now to issue these bonds and lock in a historically low rate.
One more question. I mean, I believe there's a state statute that says if you're borrowing for education, for school buildings, it tends to be front-loaded, your debt service, and then it decreases. Is anybody familiar with that?
Correct. It usually comes up in like year 3 or 4, doesn't it?
Yeah, and then
Facilities unit, and it comes
then
down.
it comes down.
No.
So, I mean, I think historically we've been in that situation because we took such a huge debt for the new school and doing ceremonial. I don't know if we've done other projects that way, but I think we've been front-loaded because of educational debt, haven't we?
I think the payments have been
Consistent.
Kind of stable, yeah. It's really the roads. Like, as I say, when these notes come due in July, the town's going to pay down over $500,000, $525,000.
2.1 million.
And then you're going to borrow 2 point.
No, out of.
Out of the 2.1. Right.
We're paying that off in 4 years.
Well, long story short, the town is very conservative. You know, the state law allows a lot of flexibility. The worst example is the city of Hartford. Those blue bars where you see the town, if the town were to never borrow again, the debt would drop each year. In Hartford's case, if they never borrowed again, their debt went up like a spaceship. It was the complete opposite of New Milford. Because you have a lot of flexibility when you issue bonds. You can say, listen, we want to borrow the money now. We'll let the next person pay for it. And you could push all that debt out, which I would never recommend. And the town historically has done just the opposite of that, just very conservative. And that's why it works so well. I've been doing this for over 20 years. And believe me, it's very rare that you see a chart like this, where someone could come in and say, okay, we're going to bond $8 million of already approved projects, plus potentially $21.5 million of new projects. Now, even the mayor says, well, Barry, and Greg's like, oh, this is going to push debt all over. Do some analysis. We did the analysis and say, well, we could structure it so that debt doesn't go up from its current levels. 90% of other communities, if they were borrowing this amount of money, you would see that debt go up a lot higher than where it is right now. The magic sauce here is the existing runoff of the existing bonds, which is mitigating the impact, and the high bond rating and the low interest rates.
Okay, thanks.
I couldn't agree more, and that's why Hartford's being bailed out by.
I know, it's unbelievable. We're all paying for that now.
But there couldn't be a better time to borrow, especially with the 2 and the 5 being inverted and historically low 10-year notes right now. It could be a perfect time to borrow if you were a municipality. So
Exactly.
it's a perfect storm, and if you wanted to borrow money, the municipality, now would be the time. And even in the long rate, the Fed probably, they're talking about maybe a cut maybe in later 2019, early 2020.
Right, because
So I don't see it really varying more than a quarter point anyway, either way. So, but this would be the time to do it, exactly. I agree with you.
Anybody have anything else? Thank you, Barry.
Thank you.
I make a motion to waive the reading of the resolution set forth in item 7A of the agenda and the exhibits annexed thereto regarding the appropriation and borrowing for costs related to renovations and improvements to the New Milford Public Library.
Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Based on that, I make a motion that the town council approve and recommend an appropriation in the amount of $8.5 million for renovations and improvements to the New Milford Public Library and an authorization to issue $6.5 million in bonds or notes to finance said appropriation, all as provided in the resolution that is set forth in the relevant document annexed to the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
I make a motion to waive the reading of the resolution set forth in item 7B of the agenda and the exhibits annexed thereto regarding the appropriation and borrowing for costs related to roof repairs and improvements at various town buildings.
We already have a second. Any discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
I make a motion that the town council approve and recommend an appropriation in the amount of $5 million for roof repairs and improvements at various town buildings and an authorization to issue $5 million in bonds or notes to finance said appropriation, all as provided in the resolution that is fully set forth in the relevant document annexed to the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Item 7C, I make a motion to waive the reading of the resolution set forth in item 7C of the agenda and the exhibits annexed thereto regarding the appropriation and borrowing for costs related to paving, repairs, and other improvements of town roadways.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
I make a motion that the town council approve and recommend an appropriation in the amount of $10 million for paving, repairs, and other improvements to town roadways and an authorization to issue $10 million in bonds or notes to finance said appropriation, all as provided in the resolution that is fully set forth in the relevant document annexed to the agenda.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Item 7D, I move that we set a town meeting contingent on Board of Finance approval on Tuesday, May 28th, 2019 at 6 p.m. in the E. Paul Martin Room of Town Hall pertaining to number 1, library renovations, number 2, town-owned building roofs, and number 3, road construction.
Second.
Any discussion?
It
All
just
those-
says here, Pete, a contingent on the board.
Yep, that's what.
It's up to I
Okay. Thank you.
Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to designate the New Milford Economic Development Corporation as a development agency for the town of New Milford.
Second.
We have a second. Randy?
Somebody second that?
Yep.
Oh, Doug?
Doug did.
Good evening. This resolution and this arrangement was suggested by Oleg Karp, and it was the subject of a meeting with the mayor, with Oleg, and for the Economic Development Commission. The commission has certain authorities, and the corporation has certain authorities. The corporation has been essentially re-upped, if you will. It's been modernized with some filings and some work necessary to bring it into the parameter of the statute that authorizes a development agency. Oleg did some research, and I've reviewed the research and done my own on behalf of the town concerning the ability of a corporation to adopt and act as the town's designated, essentially designated development agency. That authorization does not carry with it the powers of a legislature, but what it does do is it allows an agency under the auspices of the town to take action, recommend action, and negotiate matters in furtherance of economic development. The proposal as drawn, or the resolution as drawn, complies with the statutory schematic, and it essentially allows the corporation for the New Milford Development, New Milford Economic Development, to act as the development agent of the town. Now, having said that, the corporation is going to be authorized to prepare a development plan of certain projects that it might recommend. There's a 12-point requirement that it has to comply in order to provide this to the legislative body. So what this does is it has an actual agency that is working on behalf of the town, but of course subject to the authority of the legislative body in order to develop the economic plan of New Milford, to create one and to follow through on it. There's an entire statutory scheme in chapter 132 of the statutes that really is pretty aggressive but there's always a rein on it because you have to come back to the legislative body. Included in that is a recommendation of eminent domain, should that become necessary. That language in the statute is required because of the case that you might have heard of years ago, Kilo against New London. In that case, there was a taking for private development that would have enhanced the town's economic viability. That fell through, by the way. That never, all that to do went to the Supreme Court, and it never came to pass. But that eminent domain power, of course, is vested in the town, not in the agency. So I don't want you to think you're giving them the power to take property. You don't. First of all, you don't have to fund them. But the reality is that it frees up an agency of the town, in order to create economic plans and follow through with them. I was a scrivener of the resolution for this, but as to whether or not this is something that the town should embark upon, I believe that the mayor and the Economic Development Corporation are probably on the same page. I obviously have no opinion on it. I'm your lawyer. I'm not a policymaker. But it seems progressive, yet it's in keeping with what's going on with the other towns and cities. Shelton has a beautiful one, and it works very, very well, and I've explored that. And this could follow that model very ably. So I'll answer any questions that you might have that are legal.
Wow. This is an independent agency that works independently, but where does the buck stop with this?
Buck stops right here.
Okay, fair enough, all right.
Don't forget, the reality is that they do nothing without money.
Okay, all right.
The fact is they need appropriations to do this. They can't overrule the legislative body.
Okay.
And they can't overrule the planning commission.
Okay.
You can't even do this without a planning commission. You have to have a planning commission. And that's for all the checks and the balances that are.
Well, that's the trick, checks and balances, and thank you, Randy.
And you're not gonna authorize, in this particular model, as a town attorney, I would not recommend that you authorize them to execute any contracts that bind the town, although they can bind the town to plans that they create and give you.
Okay. Okay.
I'd like to ask Karen Pollard, she's our Economic Development Director, to come up for a minute. And
Thank you.
as our Economic Development Director, Karen, if you could kind of give us kind of your thoughts on the Economic Development Corporation acting as a development agency for the town of Milford.
That is something that I, in my previous experience, have worked on before, having both a commission that informs on policy matters and having the Economic Development Authority to implement such plans that the town would deem appropriate. So again, it is just as the attorney said, there is no authority granted that is free from coming back to this board in order to get a final approval. And again, financially, the body is not independent without some source of revenue. So.
Thank you. Do you have any other discussion? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Thank you. Thank you, Randy.
Thanks, Randy. Have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Thank you. Okay.
Make a motion to approve the road closure for the annual Teddy Bear Festival on June 1st, put on by the Women's Club of Greater New Milford, for the closure of 2 crossover streets on Main Street. 1 is between Church Street and Bank Street, and 2 is between the north and midsection of the green.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Shannon's here.
Oops. Hi, Shannon.
Here if there are any questions.
What's the time?
Shannon Richards, President,
The time?
from 10 to 3.
Walter?
One of my favorite slogans is, when in despair, hug your bear. Okay.
You may use that.
I just know, I'm always cognizant, because I know with the station in Milford, we can clear out as fast as the businesses in the Main Street area like you two, so that's the one thing that you gotta
Right.
be careful, is make sure you get out of there so that traffic can start flowing.
Right.
And get business back normal, but it's a great event. My kids, they're now over in college and beyond. They loved it when they were younger. How long has it been going on now?
It's our 23rd year.
That's awesome.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Shannon. Next,
I move to close the roads of Bank Street for the third Thursday concert series put on by Bank Street Investments on June 20th, July 18th, August 15th, with rain dates of June 21st, July 19th, and August 16th for the time period of 3 p.m. to 9 p.m.
Second.
any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Regarding the request of Housatonic River Brewing, I propose the approval of the closure for the Housatonic River 5K on Saturday, August 10th, 2019, with a rain date of the following day, August 11th, 2019, to close Youngsfield Road between Bridge Street and Patriots Way, and the sidewalk on Bridge Street over the river from 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m.
Do you
Chris
propose
is here.
or move?
What?
I move to approve the closure.
Second?
Any discussion?
Yeah, can I just, I'm assuming, Chris, are you here
Yep.
for this? Brian's here. Oh, yeah. Oh, I don't trust him. Yeah, just, can you just tell me how the course is gonna work and how it's gonna finish? And-
I actually have a map of the course if you
Yeah.
want to see it.
Can I just get your name?
Brian Vanderheide.
Thank you.
So you're
Starting in the field behind the brewery.
okay, so you have about a mile of it for things to thin out before they cross the bridge?
Yeah. Across the bridge, turn left on Youngsfield Road. Actually, go down the path, which runs parallel to Youngsfield Road, all the way down to Patriots Way, and then that's kind of a turnaround point. But then on the way back, they're gonna go through the outside of the field there.
And you have approval from the state to run
Yep.
on the sidewalk.
Yep.
And you have the sign off from the chief and from the traffic authority
Yep.
already, which is in your packets.
And parking.
Any-
Parking development at this?
What's that?
Yeah, your facility request?
No.
Through the parking, right?
No.
Had no property parking?
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? So we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
I make a motion to approve the Memorial Day road closure for a temporary closure of Main Street, the southern crossover over Main Street, the westbound portion of Bridge Street, Railroad Street, and Bennett Street for the setup, duration, and breakdown of the Memorial Day Parade, approximately from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Monday, May 27th, 2019, noting that an extra half hour is added to the normal time frame to allow the color guard to march to Veterans Bridge to honor the Navy and Merchant Marine veterans.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Walter.
Motion to adjourn, Mr. Mayor.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. Thank you, everybody.